Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe. We are recording this on Monday, March 11th. That means the Thunder is halfway through a 4-game homestand inside of this building. So far during this month of March, the Thunder has won 4 out of their 5 games, including a nice 3-game winning streak recently, and they've won their last 9 games here inside of this building. So this past week, that means we have had a lot of highlight-worthy plays. We've had a lot of great stats. We've had a lot of great moments inside of this building and on the road. But that means we've also had some great quotes. So we figured we'd open up this podcast with a nice little game of You Can Shay That Again.
Gotta love a good game of You Can Shay That Again. Yeah, for sure.
Especially from this past week, I feel like we've had a lot of good moments that have caught our eye in terms of what our guys have been saying recently. So Nick, I will let you go first. What is your Shay That Again?
Well, this is a nice little carryover from what you were just talking about in terms of the Thunder's 9-game win streak at home. And, most teams are going to play better at home. Mm-hmm. The Thunder certainly has all of those same advantages, but some of what's happening is just the approach that this team has had. And this quote really speaks to that. And it's from a player that you're going to have to try to guess.
Okay.
And he said, "We don't play the scoreboard. We play the minutes on the clock." And I thought that was pretty poetic.
I feel like a lot of our guys would say this.
Yes.
But it's kind of succinct. And there are a few guys that come to mind when I think of just
succinct,
powerful, succinct phrases. And the one that pops into my head is, there's 2, but the first one is Cason.
You got it.
Did I get
Nailed it.
Oh
Nailed
my
it.
gosh.
Yeah.
Shout out Cason, because he's not a man of many words.
No.
But when he does speak, you listen.
He packs a punch.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, for sure. And I just thought this was amazing perspective from a rookie. This guy's played all 64 games as a rookie, has not missed one yet. He just scored a career-high 22 against Memphis last night. So really had that. And he talked about this team wanting to be the first team ready. Basically have the first team ready mentality against a very shorthanded Memphis team. Those games can often be very difficult to get up for and to be focused on. The Thunder kind of saw that out in Portland to finish that road trip. That was a very difficult game for the Thunder. They ended up winning, but it was one that was kind of a slog against an undermanned team, a team that was dealing with some injuries and not having the season that they wanted to have. OKC really righted the ship here, coming off that tough road trip, hard-fought physical game against Miami, and then they come out and take care of business. And Cason played a big part in that. Yeah,
he knocked down 4 3-pointers in that game against Memphis. I love the thing that stands out the most about Cason. He's a rookie, right? But this doesn't sound like a rookie comment. This sounds like someone who has seen a lot of things in the NBA, has a lot of experience, has been burned by, not playing the minutes and playing the scoreboard. But this goes to show what Coach Dagnall talks about with Cason all the time is his mentality, his poise, his composure. He doesn't get rattled. And yes, Cason has faced adversity this season, as every player has. But his approach to that adversity is really, really impressive for a rookie because he just kind of absorbs it and keeps moving forward. And that's why we see him take steps forward each and every game he's out there.
And it's why a guy like Lou Dort gives him the best compliment that you can give to a rookie, which he said, "We know what we're going to get out of Cason every night."
Wow.
And you can't say that about most rookies in the NBA, that consistently what you're going to get from them. And so for Cason, a guy that is still kind of walking that great line between being a functional role player who's playing the exact same way every night, 18 to 20 minutes a night, and continuing to get some developmental reps. That's why you're going to see him towards the end of these games. If the Thunder is up big or down big at the end of some of these games, you might think, okay, Cason, sometimes he's a 6th man off the bench.
Right.
He's going to still be out there for extended periods because they've got to maximize the reps that he can get as a playmaker, as secondary ball handler, facilitator, and to really put him on primetime guys.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the defensive element that allows him to be so reliable each and every night. And of course, he pairs that with nights like tonight or nights like the other night where he knocks down 4 3-pointers, and it's just like that extra element, kind of icing on the cake to his game. But he doesn't back down when he's lined up toe to toe with like a Damian Lillard or another big guard in the NBA. Like these guys or Cason is just so steady and he just accepts the challenge in front of him head on. And that's something that you don't see very often for a rookie.
When you started off playing point guard in college,
Mhm.
you know, kind of making that next step up from where you were in high school, what do you remember about that transition, and how do you feel like you've seen Cason deal with that in ways that you were maybe pressured?
Similar to Cason, I came in as a defensive-minded player, and so all my coaches knew that they were going to put me on, you know, opposing teams' best players. Well, that meant in practice, I was going up against our starting point guard at the time, and she was not holding back. She would just like, oh, you're a good defender, huh? Okay, we'll see about that. Tries to break my ankles, tries to just run her shoulder into my chest. But Cason does such a great job. Like it took me a while to like not be rattled by, you know, the fact that I'm getting thrown into the fire. So much information is coming at me head on. Like you could kind of see my head spinning a little bit. Yeah. You don't see that with Cason at all. And it blows my mind every single time, because you would think that he's been in the NBA for about 2 or 3 years now. But a lot of this is brand new experience for Cason, and he just handles it with so much poise, better than I did when I was starting out in the college.
Yeah, Mark says that he just has incredible competitive maturity.
Yeah,
and when you see Jimmy Butler try to throw him around, I mean, it's like most guys that Jimmy Butler tries to throw around are getting thrown around.
Yeah.
And Cason just seems to keep an even keel, and it helps that he's, you know, built like a tank.
Exactly. Yeah. Great frame to match the great skill set that he has out there on the floor. All right.
Yeah, what's yours, Paris?
It's time to Shai that again. I'm not even going to pretend. I'm not even going to sit here and act like you don't know who said this.
I think everybody's going to know who said this.
I think every single human being that is watching this podcast has seen the clip from that game. What game was it? It was the Miami game, right?
Yeah, Miami game.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finishes his 47th game this season with 30 or more points, which not only leads the NBA, but also ties a Thunder record, ties Kevin Durant at 47 points. And so our very own Nick Gallo, just round of applause for Nick, because before Shai dropped this bar, Nick dropped this bar. He said, "How are you so consistent like the tide, night in and night out?" First of all, I think Shai was responding to you. I think you set the tone of that.
Just trying to be a little poetic, you know, let's lead him to that maybe. I don't know.
Done. It was well done, because it was a beautiful setup. You just lobbed it up to him. And Shai said, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to mess it up. I don't even want to mess it up. My whole life is consistent. Drop the mic. Everyone walk away. Jalen Williams lose their mind. We all lost our mind. We were like, that's a bar. And the first thing that popped into my head, I was like, we just got a SGA Instagram caption in real life.
Yeah, real time, real life.
Real-time IG caption. And I was like, well, nothing else needs to be said, because it's true. It's so true. And that's not the first time Shai has told us this.
Yeah.
He was like, look, everything you see on the court is because of how I build it off the court. Yep. I go to the practice facility the same time every single day. I'm very consistent with what I eat. I'm consistent with my off time and my recovery and my workouts. And when you're that consistent off the floor, you have no choice but to just show up as yourself on the floor, which is Mr. Consistent.
Yeah. And even Chet has talked about having someone like Shai, at that level to watch as he comes into his first professional setting has been eye-opening for him about the way that Chet talked about, the way that Shai structures his life, structures his time at the facility, structures his time away from the facility. All of that stuff Chet says is extremely valuable to learn from. And, I will say, having J-Dub and J-Will, and, it's always like a rotating cast of characters as hype men, I think has brought some of this stuff out of these guys. I mean, this is like,
I could see that.
The guys are doing all of this, and Shai absolutely knew that J-Dub and J-Will were standing there.
Yeah.
So I think that bar was for them.
Potentially. And you got the best reaction possible. I mean, their mouths just dropped open. They were like, oh my gosh. As if they were watching a rap battle.
All of the things in Shai's life that were consistent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also a great tone setter too. Because when your leading scorer is as consistent off the floor as he is on the court, it's a great example to young guys like Cason, like Chet, like rookies out there, that if you want to produce this way on the floor, it doesn't show up when you just show up when the lights are on.
Yeah.
That work starts far, far, far behind the scenes before you even step foot into a practice facility or onto a game court. And that's a good life lesson in general, but especially for an NBA team and a young NBA team, a great example to set.
It's got to be so hard when you're a guy like Shai, you change teams after your rookie year. And while you're certainly getting guidance from the teams that you've been on about how to work, what to do, a lot of it has got to be driven by yourself. And you're a player who has never won or been an all-NBA performer before, but you're trying to figure out what are the things that are going to drive winning and what are going to drive, high-level success in this league. Shai has been able to tap into those things that in terms of how he structured his life, how he structured his work, what things he focuses on in terms of his work. And then he's just, he's had that vision, he's had the understanding, but then he's just focused on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And he hasn't devoted his time and energy to thinking about All-NBA or MVP or X, Y, and Z outcomes that he can't control. He's focused on the day-to-day of what he can control. And so it's a really like left brain and right brain thing to be able to think about the big picture, but then focus on the small one.
The perfect example of this is something that we actually brought up on the Bally Sports broadcast last night against Memphis. And, Shai, every single night, I don't know if you've watched a Thunder basketball game, but every single night, Shai will do something that just makes you go like, what? Like, how did he do that? There was a play last night against the Grizzlies. Shai hits probably like the nastiest up and under I've ever seen in an NBA game. Like he covered so much ground. I don't know how he did it. He sent Santi Aldama flying into the first row, finishes the layup, and all of us are like, okay, that's Shai being Shai. That's crazy. That's a wild move. Such a tough shot, right? Well, one thing I brought up on the broadcast and that Shai has talked about is that those aren't tough shots to him because in practice and when he's working out, he's repping those situations. He's repping those practice or those shots over and over and over again. So by the time he gets to the game and he's shooting what we deem as this wild, tough shot, it's a shot that it's another shot for SGA because he practices like he plays. And this is to your point where he's focused on the day-to-day in the moment, but also has an eye toward what he might need in the future. Like, I might need an up and under. I might be, around the rim against a big man, and I might need a nice little up and under. Let's rep that. Let's work on that. And I will point out that a lot of the guys that Shai's going up against, a couple of the guys that Shai's going up against in practice, some of the Thunder player development coaches, they're bigger than Shai. Yeah. They're taller than him. And so he's getting really good reps against guys that are bigger than he is. And so by the time he gets into the game, these are just normal shots for Shai. But for us, they live rent-free in our brains over and over and over again.
I love that hit from you last night because you did such a great job of incorporating what Shai told you, but then also what you've seen with your own eyes and what you've seen at the practice facility, what you're describing, those 1-on-3 workouts where Shai, and all of this is choreographed. Shai's got the initial defender that is, right up there. Then there's another assistant coach that's hanging out at the elbow, ready to pinch over. Then there's the big defender that's waiting around the rim. And Shai is practicing sort of triangulating how to get to the spot that he wants to get through between all three of those converging bodies that are doing something different against him every single time. And it's, so anyway, great hit by you to combine the words with the visuals. And then, of course, Michael Cage had to follow up with you and just had to press you a little bit more.
I just appreciated that it wasn't a pop quiz. I don't think you guys understand how much I'm actually sweating over there by myself because Nick sits right next to Chris and Mike during games.
We have a great laugh about this.
It is so, and it's fun. It's fine. It's great. I'm on the other side. I can't see what you guys are doing. I can't see if Michael has that look in his eyes like, that's something we could quiz Paris Lawson about. So I'm just kind of over on the opposite side, sweating for the moment.
No clue whether it's coming or not.
That Michael Cage might just throw a pop quiz at me. But I accepted his extra little question at the end there just to see what else Shai does in practice. Because it is different every single day. But the one consistent thing is that he's typically the last guy off the floor after every single practice.
And that's exactly what you want from the leader of your team. And now the Thunder has a lot of different guys who lead in their different ways, but Shai set such a tone given the sheer volume of minutes, the sheer volume of responsibility that he has throughout the course of the game. And one of the ways that he really, just leads off of that responsibility is that he allows everyone else to take part in it. I saw somebody say something that I thought was just profound, which is exactly what Shai is like. He is able to be incredibly productive and efficient on the floor, racks up everything that you could possibly want to rack up in a game, but he doesn't take the air out of the Thunder on
Not
offense
at all.
or defense. He does not disrupt what the Thunder is trying to do to allow all these guys to thrive. And that's why you're seeing not just Shai, but Shai's leadership and the style in which he's doing it is allowing for so many of these guys to be shooting 40% from three and
Exactly.
be comfortable and be in rhythm.
This is a great example of this. Shai's stat line against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
23 points, 6 assists. The man is not out here just pressing and looking for his own shot. He did knock down 5 threes in this game.
That's helpful.
That'll do it. That's a really, really good thing. But it was also in the flow of the offense because for the Thunder as a whole in this game, they knocked down 21 threes. They had 10 different guys who made a three. There were 36 assists dished out in that game. And for Shai, yes, he was top of the list in terms of his scoring, but he was right there in the mix in terms of the style of play that the Thunder was playing in this game against the Memphis Grizzlies. And just whatever was required in that moment, Shai was just a part of that. And he just never looked like he was forcing anything, pressing anything. It's just about what's the best option out there on the floor.
And his assisting has really gone under the radar. I mean, we just talked about the consistency of his scoring and how, he said, my whole life is consistent. Well, if you take a look at his assists, 41 out of the last 49 games, he's had at least 5 assists. And that is a level of consistency with his playmaking and his passing that we have not seen to this point in his career. His numbers are significantly up from last season and the seasons before in that category. And I think that really should not go unnoticed in terms of the overall evolution of his game. Yeah,
definitely just an all-around, well-rounded player. And we talked about this on the Thunder Live pregame show before we went on air against Memphis. And Royce was saying, look, he's not a one-dimensional guy. He's not a hired scorer. Half of this game is played on the defensive end, and Shai obviously leads the league in steals. He's top 10 in stocks, which are steals and blocks combined. So he's really just trying to be as good as he possibly can be every minute of the game, whatever that minute requires. And he's worked really hard to make himself one of the best in all of those minutes. So great stuff from SGA throughout this season, but especially as of late here. And keep an eye out because we still have a lot of season left to play. And Shai is tying the Thunder record with 47 games with 30 or more points. So I have a feeling he's probably going
to get that.
Just might guess that way. Okay. The other guy I want to talk about is Josh Giddey, who has had himself a really nice stretch of basketball here, especially over the last 4 games, averaging 15 points, 7.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and shooting 60% from the field. And especially against Memphis, he got out to such a strong start in that game. The physicality, the force, the pace. He had 11 points in like the first 6 minutes of this game. It was like, oh my gosh, Josh Giddey's outscoring the Grizzlies right now.
It's so cool to see a nice little breakthrough from Josh on this because, one of the benefits of us having been with this team for the significant amount of time that we've been with it is you see this story over and over again. I mean, we saw it with Lou Dort in the way that he had to adjust some pieces of his game. We saw it with the way Shai had to adjust pieces of his game. You think back to the 2020 and 21 seasons, 22 seasons. He was getting guarded differently than he'd ever been defended in his life, and especially at the NBA level. Having to figure out how to rework some of his magic to get it out onto the floor. And it feels like during this recent stretch, Josh has really tapped into a different level of activity, energy, movement. There's a confidence of knowing, okay, wait a second, I've seen these pictures now for a few months, of teams might be defending us a little bit differently. You got Chet spacing the floor now. The Thunder has been a team that other teams are trying to crack and solve all season long. And so Josh has kind of worked through some of those things and has now found this level of activity where he's completely unpredictable in terms of what types of actions he's going to be in. Sometimes he's going to be spaced. Sometimes he's going to come up and be a screener. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he's going to be the ball handler out top. Sometimes he's going to be cutting from the back door. I mean, they can't get a beat on him now, and that is a great sign of development and growth because we've seen similar stuff like this. Lou Dort, same situation. There was a good long while where he was kind of parked in a corner and hadn't seen the pictures to the point where he recognized, oh, here are all the different ways that I can impact things. And so great confidence from Josh right now.
Awesome confidence and really good just toughness to just kind of like stick with it, make sure that you're doing all the right things out there. And he said something the other day that really stood out in my mind. He's like, look, we're getting a lot of different coverages this season, and that's a compliment to our offense.
Yeah.
You don't get that unless you're the number one team in the Western Conference and you are one of the best offenses in the league. Teams have to try different stuff against you in order to try to get an advantage. And so take it as a compliment as it is, but then you have Josh saying, and also, my job here is to fill the gaps here. And I think you posed this question to Josh in one of his walk-off interviews of just like, you could do so much out here. Mm-hmm. You have the ability to impact the game in a multitude of ways. How are you just trying to find your gaps here? And he's like, that's my job. It's just to go out there and find what the team needs and be able to deliver. And at 6'9", with his elite passing skills and his ability to rebound the basketball, he's really leaned into that. And I love what we saw at the beginning of that Grizzlies game where he had his scoring moments, but he also, you could see that he was using his size to his advantage a lot. Like he would just back down Jake LaRavia anytime he was on him and just kind of score over him with ease and use his rebounding, got a defensive rebound and just went coast to coast himself, just using his own advantages to make the team better and to fill those gaps like you mentioned.
Josh Giddey is 21 years old. He's played 193 games in the
Crazy.
NBA. Over 100 of those games, I think 101 now, he's had at least 5 rebounds and 5 assists in the same game. In 50 of those games, he's had a double-double.
Wow.
So you think about that. He's still only 21 years old. Mm-hmm. He hasn't even gotten to 200 games played yet, just below that. And over half of his games, he's had at least 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Yeah. And in a quarter of his games, he's had a double-double. I mean, those are significant productive performances consistently throughout the course of his career. And I think it would be silly to think that teams aren't going to try to take some of that stuff away and try to take away what the Thunder has going. If a team walked into a building against a Thunder squad that's got a 700 winning percentage and said, I guess we'll just play him straight up tonight, people would be like, what are you doing?
Are you sure?
Yeah, what are you doing? So, so expect to, and I think this is why Mark Daigneault calls the Thunder, a living organism.
Yes.
Just newsflash, like this isn't going to be the last time that we see a team try to do something creative to try to deal with what the Thunder is doing out there. Playoffs are coming potentially down the line. And so the Thunder should continue to view itself as this living organism, to be adaptable, to be flexible, and to be able to learn in real time about how to adjust to what the opposing team is getting, throwing at them.
And also enjoy the amazing passes when you see them. Can we talk about the one to Cason out in transition the other night? So Josh, he's running along the left side of the floor. He's in transition. I forget who threw him the ball. Was it Gordon? Was it Shai? Was it Dub?
It was, yeah.
I forgot that part of the play because I could only focus on the fact that without turning around, Josh kind of just palms the ball and whips it across his body. His back is to the basket, by the way. Just whips it across his body. Perfect pass to Cason in stride. Finishes the basket. And in my head, I'm like, he saw that play developing probably for like 10 seconds before he even caught the ball in my imagination.
There was a bounce pass that Josh threw that was so hard. It was also to Cason. And
Oh, I remember that one.
I was looking over to see whether our equipment guy Caleb was going to go run and try to like buff the floor back up, and there was a big dent. I was like, surely there's a massive dent in the floor from how hard this bounce pass was that Josh threw, and it was perfectly on time and on target for Cason to go out and finish it in transition.
Mark, before the Memphis game, I asked Mark about Josh, and he brought up his sideline out of bounds plays, which naturally, amazing. But he calls those strikes because they basically are. Like, that is Josh Giddey's fastball, is getting that ball on the sideline or the baseline and being able to execute a sideline out of bounds play. And like 8 times out of 10, it's going to give you a bucket. And like, that's a pretty good strike right there. Like, if you can call that play, and Mark said the goal for us is to make sure that we're leveraging that skill set. And as many plays as we possibly can, on the floor out there.
The cool thing about Josh, and this came up in a recent interview that I did with him, is like, sometimes that truly is a fastball, and he's flinging it a million miles an hour. I mean, he finds some of these passes that are just, wild, and they got to fit inside this big of a window. But there's a bit of acting that Josh has to do on those sideline out of bounds plays, and he said, like, sometimes I gotta kind of really act like I'm hunting a certain pass. And there was one in Phoenix where it was the most casual inbounds pass I've ever seen him make. But it was all theatrics to make it seem like he was going for this gentle little, simple inbounds pass. And right before he threw it, he just flicked his wrist up, and it ended up being a lob up over the top, think, to Cason down the middle. And it's like, so he's now getting into a little bit of the showmanship of it that is required as teams are starting to scout this more.
People don't realize there's a lot that goes into those out of bounds plays. I remember specifically just as a point guard, there was also, before you even get the ball, you'll notice sometimes Josh will stand in front of the baseline. So the ref can't give him the ball yet. That's to give his team time to get organized, get set up, get lined up in whatever, formation they need to be in. And then as soon as he steps out of bounds, the ref can give him the ball at any point. Because once he touches that ball, the clock starts ticking for 5 seconds. You better get the ball in bounds. And so Josh is, and the whole team knows this, give your team as much time as possible before you get the ball.
That's great poise, though. And I mean, think again, Josh started doing this stuff when he was like 19 years old.
Yes.
And, you think about most 19-year-olds that are coming into the NBA, they're living in a new country. They've got NBA refs that they've never met or talked to before. And he's had the poise and the confidence to just know the gamesmanship of that a little bit. To not like feel pressured to go run and grab the ball as soon as possible before his team is even ready. Like, there's a level of like,
I've gotten in trouble for that.
There's a level of like guts and like confidence that you have to not just be like, oh shoot, the ref is calling me over to like hurry me. Like, no, I'm going to make sure that my team is squared away, and then we'll get it going.
Or get excited like, oh, this is my time to shine. This is what I'm good at. Let's go. Let's do this. Because that could get you in a lot of trouble. I've been there. Trust me. But no, Josh Giddey showing a lot of poise and also showing some just great floor game over these last few games here for the Thunder. The other guy I want to talk about, last guy, Gordon Hayward, who is... We've seen him knock down some threes now, but it's his assisting that I know you want to talk about because he's got 10 assists over the last 2 games, and some of these dimes have been really, really cool to see.
I just love the approach from Gordon, and it seems like he's hunting some of these playmaking opportunities. A lot of it probably is just taking what the defense gives. He's been driving hard and the defense has collapsed. Opposing defenses are trying to take the pain away from the Thunder anyway because the Thunder is one of the top driving teams in the league. But thinking, just trying to put myself in Gordon's shoes, like the big picture approach of, hey, if I come in here and I try to jack up shots and try to get into a rhythm that way, that has a higher percentage chance of backfiring and hurting the team than what if I go out there and just try to facilitate and I really try to play make for others and I try to get myself back into rhythm after missing 7 weeks with an injury? Maybe that's how I get myself into a rhythm, is just really be a really nice connecting piece for this team. And as Mark Daigneault has said, like really the last minutes of that game out in Los Angeles, even though the Thunder lost and it wasn't a close game at the end, he said that really helped rev up some of Gordon's engines. And just getting into that flow, getting a feel for the ball, touching it, having it ping around. As Isaiah Joe always likes to say, the ball has energy. And Gordon, I think we're seeing some of his scoring jump in as well. Some of the defense get involved too. And I think some of that is a product of the energy that he's putting out there with his playmaking.
That's a great point. And if you put Gordon's games kind of on a map here, and you see just kind of like the energy he's playing with and the force and just like how he's moving, the trajectory's up. Like every game is more and more comfortable looking, more, aggressive out there. And you're talking about the offense. It's the defensive side that has shown kind of this for me. He had a couple of steals against Portland. He had one really just sneaky kind of heady steal against Miami where he kind of came behind. I think it was Bam Adebayo. Might have just snuck behind him and poked the ball away, started a transition layup. And Coach Dagnall pointed out, obviously, Gordon has a lot of experience as a veteran, but he's played for great defensive coaches. He's played for great defensive teams. And so you can tell that IQ is there for Gordon. And so you could see him, if you just notice him on the defensive end, he's always in the right spot. He's just always kind of like where he needs to be. And it's resulted in a couple of really heady plays for him. And so the energy that he's playing with, the IQ he's playing with, you're seeing it get more and more traction here as he gets more and more time out there on the floor.
He was a monster in that Miami game.
Oh my gosh,
and just the physicality, he has really been in the right position a lot lately. And he showed that in one of his very first games, kind of blew up some pick and roll action just by being over in help side position early. And I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I wasn't too surprised that he was such a monster in that Miami game. He spent a lot of time in the Eastern Conference.
He did.
And the Thunder's got this big East Coast road trip coming up later in the season. He's seen a lot of pictures of these guys that they're going to be facing.
That's a good point.
On this East Coast trip moving forward. And so it's just, the Thunder being in such an infancy stage of these guys' careers, they're trying to get as many reps against some of these big time players as they can possibly get. The cool thing for Gordon is like he's seen all of these guys so much. And so there's probably some predictive elements in terms of just his instincts taking over, his positioning taking over, that I think we'll continue to see more and more of.
Yeah, I mean, when you go up against a team that you used to play 4 times a year, like a team like the Miami Heat, who's probably in your same division, right? Southeast Conference. Southeast Conference to the Charlotte Hornets. Like that's going to come with a level of experience that you can just apply into the game.
Thunder's got 2 games against Milwaukee still left on the schedule. Indiana tomorrow. The Thunder still got to play twice. So certainly might be able to lean on a little bit of that corporate knowledge that Gordon's got.
Such a good point. All right. Before we head out, we got to give you what's coming up for the Thunder. And we got 2 more games here inside of this building at Paycom Center. The next game is going to be against the Pacers on Wednesday. I'm very interested in this game because the last 2 games that the Thunder has played, if you just kind of group them together, the Thunder's played Miami and they've played Memphis. The 2 things the one thing that Miami and Memphis have in common, defensive-minded coaches, defensive-minded team. And those were kind of wrestling matches between those 2 teams. The Pacers, it might be a sprinting match.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It has a very high chance of being a high-scoring game inside of this building. And it goes to show something that Coach Dagnall talked about, which is being able to find different ways to win games. Like if you want to be a good team in this league, you got to be able to throw different pitches and be able to answer to different pitches as well. And you can't be predictable.
Yeah, in football, they call it being an all-weather team.
I like that we're throwing all different kind of sports metaphors.
We're going for it all today. But yeah, I mean, you got to be able to win when it's 90 degrees outside of the first week of September. You got to be able to win in December when it's snowing on you too. And the same thing goes in the NBA. You've got to be able to win the shootouts that you're probably going to see against Indiana and Dallas coming in this week on Thursday. I know we'll get to that. And then you got to be able to win the grinders. 107-100 against Miami. That's a big time performance to demonstrate, hey, we got all the tools in the tool bag that we're gonna need down the line.
Yeah, that'll be a really interesting game, fun to watch. And then the last game of this homestand is against the Dallas Mavericks on Friday. That is going to be on TNT. And the Dallas Mavericks, as we know, come with a lot of offense at their disposal in the form of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, of course.
Yeah, and these games against them have been wild battles all season long. None of the 3 have looked the same all year, and so this is going to be a fascinating one for OKC as they host Dallas and Luka and Kyrie, and You're going to not want to miss that one. You're going to have to stay up late for it, but
will.
You're not going to want to miss it.
It is a 9 p.m. Central Time tip-off, but I think it'll be worth it if you stay up and watch that game. But until then, that wraps us up here on our Thunder Basketball Universe podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up, and catch you later.